Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for yet another installment of Media Post webinar series. I'm Mike Winkleman, Content Director for Bespoke by Media Post, and we have a great presentation and panel discussion for you today, put together by our friends at Reveal Mobile. Media Post webinars bring together the media, marketing, and advertising community to learn more about the methodologies and technologies to make effective business possible across a variety of categories. Brought to you by our industry's top solutions providers, marketers, and practitioners. Leading today's webinar will be Dan Dillon, Reveal Mobile's CMO and a frequent presenter on Media Post webinars. He will be joined by Laura Conway, a Senior Marketing Manager at Reveal Mobile. Dan and Laura's focus today will be what they're calling the social showdown, Facebook versus TikTok. As they'll explain, TikTok over the past year has accelerated its efforts to dominate the social user space by making improvements in both the user and advertiser experiences. But not to be outdone, Facebook is making changes itself. After looking closely at the changes both platforms have made, at trends in user usage and at advertiser expectations, Dan and Laura will dive into two very revealing case studies and provide insights into which platform is likely to win this contest. All tremendously timely, relevant, and useful information, which I, for one, can't wait to hear. Before we get started, just a reminder. After the presentation, we'll have time for a Q&A session. You can submit your questions at any time during the presentation in the question box that you'll find on the GoToWebinar interface on the right of your screen. With that, let's bring in Dan to get things going. Dan, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be with you all again today. We super appreciate it. Laura, good to co-present with you as always.
Yeah, you too. I'm super excited about this one. We learned so much during the research phase for this presentation, so I think you're going to come away with a lot today.
Yeah, this will be a fun one. So we're positioning this as the social showdown. So I want to thank everybody first and foremost for making time. Well, actually, it's a good day to attend a webinar because it's the longest day of the year, so you have extra time to do stuff, right? I don't know about you all. The sun is setting where I am at 8:28, so I have all kinds of work day ahead of me. Laura, what time is the sun setting where you are?
Pretty much around the same time, because even though we're in different states today, I think we're kind of around the same line, since I'm in North Carolina and Dan's in Florida today.
That's right. That's right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for making time on the summer solstice. We're happy to have you all. Let's jump in and just talk through a couple of agenda items that we're going to cover today. And of course, we also have our pictures on the screen, so you know who's Laura and who's Dan, because it may not be obvious. But we're going to cover a ton of ground today in a short span of time. So buckle up and stick with us here. First thing we're going to do is just give you an overview of how paid social plays in the broader digital ecosystem. And then we're going to zero in very quickly on the TikTok versus Facebook fight, really is what it is. If you're in the social media circles and con is happening right now, there's a lot that's going on in this ecosystem. And then we're going to zero in on some of the big moves Facebook has made recently and some of the big moves that TikTok has made to sort of cater to both users and advertisers. And then for the second half of the webinar, we're going to focus really heavily on marketers' expectations. Where are our hearts and heads and minds, right, in terms of what we want from these platforms? And then Laura is going to round out the session with a couple of really powerful examples, one on Facebook and one on TikTok, to show you what these platforms are sort of best at and how to use them for specific types of campaigns. And then, without letting, of course, the cat out of the bag too early, we want to make sure you leave today's webinar knowing who's going to win this fight, or at least who we think is going to win this fight, right? And most importantly, of course, we have questions. We always want to make sure we're getting to your questions in the webinar. So anytime something occurs to you that you want to ask Laura or ask me, or ask us for follow-up. If we can't answer it on the spot, we're happy to follow up with you with really hard questions. Put them in the questions box and we'll get to them in due course. So with that, you ready to go, Laura?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. So we're going to start with the obvious, but we wanted just to put some data behind the foregone conclusion of how paid social works in the world. We actually conducted a study at Reveal Mobile not too long ago and asked a bunch of marketers across the US, what ad channels do you run to drive sales? Very simple, right? And you can see first place by a long shot is paid social. It runs the world, right? In terms of acquiring new customers online, new customers offline, in store. nearly 70% of marketers are using paid social today to drive top line sales. We'll get to measurement later in the webinar, but it's interesting that the question is drives sales. And these are two things this is something that the two platforms are not super great at doing. So we're going to unpack that for you as well. And then you can see, of course, all the other channels that marketers run ads in, all the way down to out of home and streaming video. So with that, let's zero in now on Facebook and TikTok. Now that we've set the stage for what paid social means to the world, here is what we're spending in this category in the US in 2022. Paid social is getting about 57 billion of our dollars in terms of the ad ecosystem. And so that's a big number, right? But how do we think about that in terms of comparison? Well, if you look at Facebook's portion of that, it's about 46 billion rounded up. So they're getting just about all of the paid social spend in the US minus $10 billion. So it's a giant player, we know this. And that includes Instagram, of course, it includes WhatsApp, it includes Facebook, naturally. So what's left for everybody else? Well, of what's left, TikTok is getting $6 billion. Now that's the 2022 number. So I'm looking at that second bar on the bottom graph for TikTok. And you can see that leaves a little bit left over for the Twitters and the Pinterests and the Snapchats of the world, which is all good. But this webinar is about the TikTok and Facebook fight. So by this slide, it's pretty obvious TikTok is winning where the money is going. And that story actually plays out pretty nicely in terms of where ads are showing up in our feeds. This is some data that Whistleout produced late last year about the percentage of your feed on your phone that is ads. So when you open up Facebook, you're getting about an ad every 4th or 5th post, according to this data. And when you open up the TikTok app, you're getting an ad every, I don't know, what is that, every 40th post, something like that, right? Math, who knows, right? So somewhere in that range. And we know that because we experience it ourselves. We know demonstrably that there are far fewer ads on TikTok that we see than there are on Facebook. So needless to say, with all that money pouring into Facebook, more ads are showing up in your feed. So that makes a really fertile ground for TikTok to sort of rise up and take some of that money. And here's what's actually happening in terms of usage. This is interesting. On an average day, an average user opens up Facebook 8 times. On an average day, an average user opens up TikTok 8 times. So there's parity, right? Now, that being said, once you've opened the app, you're only spending on average about a half an hour in Facebook, 33 minutes according to the data, which is a meaningful amount of time, right? We all have better things to do, so we get off and do other things. But man, when we open that TikTok app, look at what happens. We sort of sink in, we sort of forget time. We spend 68 minutes on average per day in the platform. And I don't know about you, Laura, but 68 sounds
so much time.
I mean, maybe 168 on some days, who knows,
Oh
right? It just happens, right? It just happens. We know this because it's entertaining, and we're learning how to cook, and we're learning how to sew, and we're learning how to travel and save money on airplanes. All kinds of things happen on TikTok. So TikTok's winning the time battle, but you go back to the user volume, and Facebook is clearly winning. 240 million users in the US alone for Facebook versus TikTok's 137 million users in the US. So again, way ahead. However, if you take that number of users and multiply it by the number of minutes users are spending, you actually get more user minutes in TikTok, 9.3 billion available to advertisers, compared to the 7.9 billion user minutes available to advertisers on Facebook. So interestingly, even though TikTok is sort of this upstart and everyone's wondering about it and using it in new sort of emerging ways, the majority of people are spending the majority of their days on that app. So let's dig into how TikTok and Facebook are making some big changes for advertisers and for creators alike. So we need to start the Facebook story by zeroing in on an internal memo that was leaked in Facebook about a month ago. This is not made up. I'm not trying to be sensationalistic. This is real. A gentleman named Tom Allison at Meta, who runs the Facebook app, he's the VP of Facebook, he released a memo internally to his Facebook team about a month ago, maybe 2, and said, hey guys, it's game time. Like, it's happening. We are changing the way Facebook works in the world, okay? And if there were 2 kind of big announcements that were in that 6 pages of memo, the first one was, we're no longer going to be the platform for updating grandma and grandpa on how the kids are doing. We're no longer going to be the app that allows you to stay in touch with your distant relatives in Palatine, Illinois, or Sacramento, California. We are, part 2 of that announcement, becoming an entertainment platform. By the way, similar to what TikTok is doing. So Facebook is great for lots of things, right? We know that. It connects people, it connects loved ones. That's sort of their core message. But they're already making advances in this entertainment platform by serving you Instagram Reels in your Facebook feed. So you know, when you open the Facebook app, you're already getting a set of Reels at the top of your screen. You can see it on the image here that aren't even in Facebook. They're being fed to you from your Instagram account based on whatever algorithm is running on Facebook, on Instagram for your Reels. So that's the start of what Facebook is trying to do. And here's an interesting evolution that Facebook is making on the user side as well. Rather than prioritizing posts from people you follow or people you like or people you're related to for that matter, Facebook is going to start serving you content based on things it thinks you're going to prefer, based on the algorithm, right? What does that sound like? Sounds a little bit like the For You page, right, on TikTok. So when I open my Facebook app in 6 months or 10 months from now, I might not get posts from Laura or from my siblings or whoever. I might get cooking videos because I love to cook with cheese or whatever the case might be, right? So Facebook is definitely making a play towards helping you discover new content based on the mystery algorithm. The other thing that Facebook is doing is they're re-merging Facebook and Messenger. About 8 years ago, they decoupled those 2 things and put Messenger in its own world, made it its own app. It runs in Facebook, as you know, but it's sort of a separate experience when you open the app. They're bringing those 2 things back together to make sharing content with people in your DM list a lot easier. So now when you get those great videos on Facebook, you can share them with friends just as easily as you share your favorite TikTok videos. So Facebook is really going to be changing from a platform for connecting friends and family into really sort of this video heavy, motion oriented entertainment platform. So it's going to be much more visual and a much more fertile ground for sharing content among friends who maybe you don't even follow, but you want in your list. So this is really the ground shaking memo that came out from Facebook a few months ago. And you're going to see this over the coming months with changes incrementally happening already, again, with the Reels feed. So that's what's happening on the user side with Facebook. Let's take a look at what's happening on the advertiser side. Some of the big moves Facebook has made in terms of catering to advertisers is they've removed the ability to target audiences based on sensitive topics. So when you're going through Facebook and you're building your audience based on preferences of the audience, you can no longer target based on things like religion or ethnicity or political beliefs or health-related issues, which is obviously a good move, right? We don't want to have any sort of marginalized or compromised communities in any way being targeted for any kind of underhanded reasons, right? So that was a good move on Facebook's part. The other thing Facebook has done for advertisers is they've made it much easier, and this is really for B2B advertisers. They made it much easier for leads to be downloaded directly into your CRM, whatever CRM you run, with partner integration. So this is really just about quality of life improvements for a B2B marketer. And then lastly, interestingly, Facebook is allowing you to exclude people from your list of targeted audiences based on content they regularly consume. So this is different from bullet 1. Bullet 1 says you may not target these people because of certain attributes. Bullet number 3 is brand safety. Don't serve your ads to people who follow stories about crime and violence, or don't serve your ads to people who follow stories about social issues or whatever topic you want to sort of steer clear of. You can say exclude those people from my audience and don't serve ads to them because of the types of content they regularly consume. So that's a good move from a brand safety standpoint for advertisers on Facebook. So those are some of the big moves on the Facebook side. Let's take a look at some of the even maybe bigger or more compelling moves that TikTok is making on both the user side and the advertiser side. So the big story out of TikTok is length of video. We know back in the day, what did TikTok start with, Laura? Was it a couple of seconds or 30-second videos, something like that you could run? And then not long after that, they said, oh, you know what? That's too short. We're going to make everyone, make the limit for everyone 3 minutes. So now go to town, have some fun. Well, that's changing again. TikTok is now saying, you know what? You can post videos on TikTok up to 10 minutes long. So not only is TikTok going after Facebook, it sounds like TikTok is sort of going after YouTube and Netflix and Paramount, right? Who knows what else? So with these longer videos, of course, you can tell much richer stories. Importantly, you can also monetize them more easily. It's going to be, right? It's going to be more tolerable for a user to watch a video at the 5-minute mark after sort of being engrossed in a story than it is for a user to be served up an ad after 90 seconds. Right? I'm not going to have the patience to watch an ad after a minute of my time, but I might give up a few seconds of my time after 5 minutes or 7 minutes of video. That's not bad. So this is making it a much more monetizable platform for creators in terms of longer videos. The other thing that TikTok is doing is they're letting creators credit people who've inspired creators to make their own original content. So we know duets. Duets are a thing. They've been around for a long time. And of course, you're giving credit to the duet person because they're in your video. But this is, the bullet number 3 here is about giving credit to people who are simply in the background and not visible in your video, but who inspired you for your own original creation. It's just, again, creating goodwill in the creator community on TikTok. And then
there was a big push to add those kinds of features. I saw an interesting documentary, I think it was on Netflix a little while ago, about how you know, your average kid would come up with a dance or something like that, and then farther down the line, a few months later, an influencer or somebody with a lot of power and who can make money from their videos was making money based on the videos that these, you know, more average kids created. So it's great that they are able to kind of, you know, give credit where credit is due.
That's a great point. So maybe I should start listening to my kids when they say they want to be TikTok famous. Maybe I should take that seriously. I'm like, oh, come on, kid. No way. But maybe it's real. Oh my gosh, I've been wrong. That's a great point. Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, because you know what? Anyone is capable of making amazing content that's worth sharing, and that could even be, who knows, a kid like mine. So the last bullet here on this list is about shifting TikTok from being a social commerce platform where TikTok made me buy it, you know, 12, 18 months ago. We've all seen that hashtag, to the new one, TikTok taught me. So what does that remind you of? It reminds me of YouTube. If I need to go fix a leaky faucet, or I need to go change a light switch in my house, what do? I pull up the YouTube video that tells me how. Well, guess what? Now I can learn pretty much anything on an even more enticing platform, the new one, TikTok. TikTok taught me. They're running linear TV ads to promote this this hashtag. They're running streaming video ads, audio, all of it, to sort of get people into this mindset of learning how to do things on TikTok. In fact, in Cannes right now, there's a whole bunch of industry executives talking to Meta and talking to TikTok, and their experiences in Cannes are very different. This was covered just this morning. TikTok's banner or stage, if you will, is really about education and learning and the value of video and what it can do for people and how it can improve livelihoods. Meta's banner or Meta's tent is really about splash and dazzle and influencers and excitement. So two very different approaches to roughly the same market. But it's interesting to see how TikTok is sort of positioning itself as a platform for learning, a platform for self-development, which is pretty cool, actually. So that's what's happening on the user side with TikTok. Let's take a look at what's happening on the advertiser side, and then we're going to switch gears and have Laura take over here in just a minute. The first thing that TikTok is doing on the advertiser side is they're making sure they're steering clear of all the press that hasn't done them any favors, right? They want to make sure that your ads as an advertiser are being seen by real people, not bots, in a fraud-free environment. So they're very conscious of the fact that ad tech is riddled with reputation problems, fraud here and there, and they don't want to have any part of that story. So they're making great strides in ensuring that your ads are being seen by the people who you want to see them. The other thing they're doing is they're giving people the ability to run ads on essentially a brand safe environment. So filtering inventory, similar to what Facebook was doing, as we talked about a few slides ago. They're giving advertisers a much richer experience in terms of filtering who the ad should appear in front of. And of course, I should mention this just as a way of a reminder, TikTok accepts custom audiences. So if you were to download a list of email addresses or a list of mobile ad IDs, you can ingest all of that into TikTok and run ads and use your own inventory filters because of course you've curated that audience in the background. So just a quick nod to TikTok's liking custom audiences in the same way that Facebook does. And then lastly, and this is really where the rubber meets the road for a lot of advertisers, brands in particular, is the creator marketplace. And even though creator has the notion of a user, creator, as you know, on TikTok is as much a user as it is an advertiser or a brand. And this is where advertisers as big as McDonald's and as small as, the shop down the street are finding custom sounds, remixing custom music, licensing songs to start their own trends. This is really where brands are making the magic happen in terms of finding new opportunities to connect with audiences and generating those sort of authentic experiences that Gen Z and millennials and to some extent older generations still want from brands that they like and respect. So some pretty big moves, especially from Facebook, on away from ma and pa over to the world, and from a TikTok standpoint, making sure the world remains friendly and essentially safe, even for its youngest users. So all that to say, these platforms are not the be-all end-all for everybody. And when it comes to marketers, they're really good at a lot of things, but not everything. So this slide talks about measurement in particular. So when you think about advertising on Facebook or on TikTok, those platforms are super good at reach, measuring impressions, telling you what your click-through rate is, what your cost per acquisition is, how good your audience is, how frequently your ads are showing up to your audience, the budget you can set, and the timing and the interval and all that good stuff. But that's where they stop, right? So TikTok and Facebook kind of give you what marketers need, but they don't always give you what the business needs. They don't always give you that top line sales number. They don't give you foot traffic numbers. And this, remember, back to our first slide, we know marketers are using these platforms to drive top line sales. So in these next, actually several slides, Laura's going to walk you through a couple of campaign examples, sort of torn from the real world, that give you a view into how to use these platforms to do what they're best at, and also measure top line sales, foot traffic, things that really matter to the business and frankly to the finance team, right? That's where we need our bigger budgets coming from the CFO. So with that, let's switch over here to you, Lauren. Have you walk us through a couple of examples.
Yeah, let's do it. So we work with this agency called Juzzolo, and they work with Westlake Hardware, which is a big, essentially franchise group kind of thing that works, that is a bunch of different Ace hardware locations. So we're going to look at how to do some geofencing marketing and then use those audiences on Facebook and then measuring the foot traffic attribution piece and top line sales like in the second half of that gauge that Dan was just talking about. So this Westlake Hardware is, there's about 150 locations. Their goal really is to boost loyalty and same store sales, as well as acquire new customers for the newer locations and the new openings. So those growth in same store sales is critical, as I mentioned before. So in order to really drive home the customer retention and loyalty, and to make sure that they don't start, the customers don't start scampering over to Home Depot or even Walmart that sells a lot of, homeware stuff like this. They retargeted the locations that their customers already visit. So they drew the virtual barrier in a geofencing marketing software, and they were able to capture the device IDs of those that visited their own Westlake Ace hardware locations. With that audience of mobile device IDs, they were able to upload those as a custom audience to Facebook and use the placement on Instagram. They also use Pinterest, but we'll focus on the Facebook and Instagram part. And then they ran their ads in order to retarget and keep that customer retention and loyalty. And they also looked at some foot traffic analytics in order to really hone in on their marketing strategy too. These foot traffic analytics right here are also from the geofencing marketing platform that they use to get their custom audiences. But what they're able to do is really understand new customer acquisition as well. So when they geofence their current locations, they were able to find things out like how far away customers travel to visit the location that they often go to. And in this case, it's 81% of people live or work within 5 miles of the location that they visited. You can also see on the heat maps down there of exactly where, the hot spots of where people live and work are as well. So they can make kind of different marketing decisions if they're going to use other channels like direct mail or any kind of out of home campaigns on top of their Facebook ads. And they can really get a lot of good insights based on this foot traffic analytics that they're able to gather here. And then in order to measure the top line sales and foot traffic attribution, you can see it in this chart. So what this chart tells you is out of the targeted devices that they were pulled in this particular campaign, who of those audience members actually came back. So which of the locations or which of the people are loyal customers, and how is their are their social ads affecting foot traffic? So you can see here that little line across the top is the daily visits, and they've got some peaks in there. So those are either maybe Saturdays when people are stocking up on their DIY, projects. Maybe they have a big sale during a certain time too. So you can kind of see how those compare over the days and the weeks throughout the campaign. But one of the greatest numbers in there is that conversion rate right in the middle. So 22% of the devices that they targeted came back within their campaign window. So that really shows you the online paid social media ads that they were running and how that affected actual foot traffic. So you can, if you were the marketer in this case, you could turn around and show your business stakeholders what kind of conversion rate you had there, which goes so much further than e-com sales or something, because you can definitely, that's easy to track through Facebook and even TikTok, but not so much when you're talking about driving foot traffic to locations and top line sales there. In this case, they were able to attribute over $300,000 in revenue to their sales through some different kind of algorithms that they use based on the the conversion rate there, that 22%. And since they only spent about $54,000 during this campaign, that's a return on ad spend of over 550%. So those are the real numbers that really matter to the business, as opposed to reach and impressions and the other little metrics that you work on in your social media. Those things matter to you, but maybe not so much to people outside of the marketing department.
I wonder, Laura, if those peaks of people visiting Ace were people who watched TikTok videos on how to fix something.
Yeah. That's a good point. Or found out about a new product on there too, because I know the discovery happens a lot on really all the platforms. I know I learned a lot about new products that way too.
That's right. In this case, Facebook made me buy it, or Facebook taught me.
Yeah. Or you saw it was a TikTok that was saved to a reel that was on Instagram, and then it showed up on your Facebook feed. That happens all the time too.
The attribution puzzle continues.
Oh yes, multi-touches. Attribution is an elusive target, but this is a really good way to do it. At least you know that those devices were in your audience and then they showed back up in the store. So that's a pretty close one-to-one relationship there. Okay, cool. So now we're going to look at a different way to use some audiences. So in the last example, they really just retargeted their own locations in order to retarget to maintain their customer loyalty. But in this Bojangles example, we're going to look at thinking outside the box a little bit for a QSR example on TikTok. So when you look at some foot traffic analytics, you see your competitive locations on the top. These ones are a little bit more obvious. Subway, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, Moe's, and even Jersey Mike's are different competitors that compete with Bojangles, and you can see that the foot traffic overlap, I know it's kind of small there, but there's definitely foot traffic overlap between the competitors and the Bojangles things here. However, if you take it a step further and you see the other kinds of categories that those diners also visit, you'll see things like First Bank and Food Lion, Walmart, and Starbucks. So that's really thinking outside the box about what other kinds of locations you can geo-target in order to find exactly the custom audience that you want. So we have that illustrated on the next slide there. So that way you can really think outside the box, but based on the data that the foot traffic analytics is showing you, and not just kind of making it up and hoping that Bojangles diners also go to a certain kind of store. You can actually see with foot traffic analytics here what kind of overlap the two different types of locations have. And then in the same way, you would export that custom audience, push it into TikTok. It plays really nice. And then you can run your ad. So this is a Bojangles ad of a whole bunch of people eating. This is just a screenshot of it, but everybody's taking like their first bite out of that big juicy sandwich. In this case, you would want to use the goal type of reach, which is not necessarily intuitive, because sometimes you would think about like store visit or something like that as the reach, as the goal type, but reach will just make sure that everybody that's possible in your audience will see the ad. So that way you can reach as many as possible, so you can measure your conversion rate, as we'll show you on the next slide. And then maybe you can use a call to action like order now or something like that. TikTok has a lot of different calls to action you can choose from, and in this particular case, there's a lot of really restaurant friendly ones as well, which is great. And then in order to measure attribution, we'll measure the store foot traffic attribution, which we'll show you in the next slide. But quickly, I wanted Dan to tell us the 3 keys to motivate diners, because there's some good ones for TikTok when you're creating your content.
Sure. If you are marketing food of any kind, not just QSR, quick serve restaurant, options, but any really plated food or food service product. There was a piece of research done by a group called MGH recently, and they said there are 3 things that motivate diners on TikTok to take action and buy your food. The number one above all is make sure it is the star of your creative, right? You can see in this still from this TikTok that this woman is loving this sandwich from, in this case, Bojangles, which is a QSR in the South and Southeast. The second thing that they recommend doing is promoting not just the food you're best known for, your most famous or popular item, but something that sets you apart, right? If you're in this case, a QSR with a lot of fried chicken sandwiches, maybe showcase a beautiful salad that you're making available to a diner who may not be right in the market for a greasy sandwich. So highlight those unique menu items that are even off brand. And then thirdly, people want to see TikTok people who are looking at your ads. They want to see what the restaurant looks like. What's the view? Where's it located? What does the storefront look like? What is the view out the window if you're on the bay, right? Whatever the case is, make sure you give those potential diners on TikTok a view of those 3 things. And those are going to have a material impact on your success rate with getting people into your restaurants.
Yep. Whenever you go over those top 3 things, I think about the ads that I've seen that are much more enticing than others. And I'm like, some people know those tips and others don't. So it's good to have those written out there. So back to our Bojangles example with this foot traffic attribution, this works in the same way. So in this case, the targeted devices were about 60,000, and we saw about 4,600 of them over the campaign window, which is a great conversion rate. And then we even have this little widget on the back end too, where if you add your average ticket size to it, that it'll automatically multiply it out. So I think in this case, I can't remember what the number is, but whatever. Here it shows you that the top line sales from that your Facebook ad or TikTok ad drove here was $138,000, and there's no way that you spent that much on TikTok over the campaign window. So that's just a fantastic return on ad spend, regardless of how much you spent. And it's great to see those very top sales. This is something that you could just take a screenshot of and send right over to your business stakeholders, and then they'll get a much better understanding of how your campaigns are actually affecting the business, as opposed to, we had 2 million impressions and a 2.7 click-through rate. These are metrics that your business cares more about, as opposed to just those marketing metrics that you and your team care about most.
To redeem myself from my earlier math snafu, I can tell you this is a $30 average ticket. So
okay, cool, thank you.
You take a family to Bojangles for a couple sandwiches, a couple fries and drinks, maybe a Sunday, and you've got your $30
Bow box.
Exactly, you got it.
Yeah.
But really cool. That's powerful to be able to see that you've spent X on TikTok and you've driven Y in sales. That is pretty impactful, I must say.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Laura. Those are awesome illustrations. I really appreciate that. I want to make sure we don't leave people hanging much longer. And I want to just throw out a couple of scenarios that will illustrate who's going to win this battle. So we know TikTok is trying to eat Facebook's lunch. They're trying to eat really YouTube's lunch. Seems like everybody's lunch, right? We will see how this evolves. But one of two things are going to happen. Either TikTok is going to win or Facebook is going to win. Here's how that's going to shake out. TikTok will win if Facebook just does not succeed in releasing new features to attract that younger demographic. So we know that Facebook is sort of an older person's platform, right? That's the keeping mom and pa updated on the kids, right? That's your sort of your, family style platform. But they've got to merge these, these functionalities across Messenger, across WhatsApp, and make sure they're attracting that new user, and also bringing in that entertainment platform vibe, which is, don't just show me the pictures of my friends posting, show me the stuff I'm really interested in and learning about, right? TikTok will also win if they avoid privacy issues, right? This is something they've been very adept at doing. They had some bad press early on when they became kind of a center of gravity, but they've skirted that pretty effectively, right? They're steering clear of stories about fraud. They're steering clear about stories about privacy issues. And if they keep doing that, they will maintain their traction and likely win this battle. TikTok will also win if Facebook just rests on its laurels and keeps the ad manager experience the same in Facebook. Because let's be honest, if you're advertising on Facebook today, using that ad manager, if you're good at it, it means you've been doing it a long time. It's clunky, it's kludgy, it's hard. They don't do you any favors. And if they don't make any updates to it, advertisers are going to start demanding a better experience because you know what? We're people too. And then thirdly,
and also the ads managers on other platforms are super streamlined and slick, and they're pretty easy to use while giving the same kind of data too and having a lot of the same functionality. So they do need to get on that.
Totally good call. You're right. And if you've not been in TikTok's ad manager yet, it's a material difference for sure.
Oh yeah.
To your point, Laura. And then lastly, if TikTok continues to empower advertisers of all stripes, the McDonald's at the very top of the heap, all the way down to the store in the corner, they're going to win this battle, right? Because they're becoming the platform for everybody, even though it is only for you, which is really the paradox of TikTok. It's a huge big tent that attracts all kinds of users across all kinds of demographics, but the experience is so tailored and so curated that you spend 68 minutes a day on it, right? So it's pretty powerful. Now,
it's a rabbit hole, but it's a rabbit hole designed for you.
that's exactly right. That's exactly the way to think about it. Now, it's not a foregone conclusion that TikTok is going to win this battle because Facebook, we know, already has huge amounts of wind in its sails, right? So here's how TikTok is going to win. They're going to win if they do succeed in becoming that entertainment platform. If that Tom Allison memo comes to fruition and they pivot, ultimately, what we would call a pivot, and transform themselves into this new type of experience, they're going to get to keep some of their lunch for sure. Facebook also has to stay out of the press about privacy issues, about fraud, about sharing data, and they need to stay off the hill, right? They need to not show up in congressional hearings when they're invited. So the point is there to not get invited in the first place.
Yeah.
Right, because you have to go if you're invited. That's what I hear. Yeah. And then, of course, if Meta does merge all these powerful tools, and let's be honest, they are super slick and they are easy to use. Facebook, Instagram, we love it, Messenger, WhatsApp, all these are under the Meta umbrella. If they can bring all these together and create a much more seamless, entertainment-driven experience, Facebook stands a pretty good chance of, again, keeping most of its lunch. And here's the thing. A lot of platforms make bad bets. It's not unusual. It's not even uncommon. So TikTok so far has made some pretty good bets along the way, but just wait. It's likely they will make some missteps. And if TikTok makes some bad bets and decides to not change something in time that people are expecting it, Facebook can use that momentum to sort of gain more ground and continue to stay ahead in terms of ad spend of its chief rival, which is today TikTok. So we will be watching how this shakes out. It is not a given if it's going to go left or right, but I'm telling you what, when this webinar is over, I'm going to spend the rest of my 68 minutes seeing what I can learn. All right, let's go ahead and jump into some questions. Mike, you want to come on back and see what we have in the queue?
Yeah, I'm back. That was really great. As I mentioned earlier, we have some time now for a few questions. We'll get to it in just a minute. During the Q&A session, feel free to keep putting your questions into the questions box on the side panel, and we'll get to as many as we can. If we don't get to some of them, don't worry about it, because the Reveal Mobile team will have your questions and can answer them individually. Also, we've had a couple questions about this, so a recording of today's webinar as well as the slide deck will be sent to all of you via email later today, so keep an eye out for that. So we have a lot of really good questions here, so let's get to them. We have two questions, getting back to the demographics issue, Dan, that you were talking about. Two questions here from Christopher Cloney. How does the audience targeting compare between the two platforms? What are the key differences? And can you shed light on the demographics of the users who frequent both platforms most often? There is a sense that TikTok attracts a much younger audience and one that should not be advertised to.
Is a really astute question. And we actually did a webinar on this a few months ago. And Laura, I'm gonna ask for your help in helping me remember how it breaks down. Do you want to speak to it directly? Because you might have the numbers in your head. Please.
Yeah, at least I remember like kind of some top level stuff that I think will definitely answer your question. So I remember when we were really diving into the demographics of it, yes, it definitely skews younger. You know, the 18 to 24 is a really big chunk of their user base. However, there's still 8 million people over the age of 25 that are on TikTok daily. So that means that even though there is a younger demographic.
Sorry, Laura, I think it was
88 million. That's it. Sorry. Yes. I left off a really big number there. Yeah. So 88 million, what we were calling like real adults with expendable money and who are out of college most of the time, and, you know, who have jobs and, you know, people that will actually buy your products, those, and then don't have to go ask their parents or something like that, are on TikTok as well. So even though it kind of has a stigma, the other thing too is the older than 25 user base is increasing by the exposure of you know, different TikTok videos through reels and stuff like that too. So people are looking for more, so they're jumping on. I mean, my mom is in her late 50s and she has a TikTok. So, and I know Dan has a TikTok because he watches it with his kids and stuff too. So, you know, they're on there. When it comes to audience targeting and the biggest differences between them, honestly, when it comes down to like the different types of core audiences that you can create, they're really similar. You can you know, create audiences based on location, like zip code or states. You can, you know, do interest-based targeting because a lot of those things are, you know, the algorithm on TikTok can figure out what you like, as also, you know, on Facebook where it's, you know, what you like and what you follow. All those things are on there. And then like the examples that I went through, you can upload custom audiences to both as well. So you can even take the audience creation completely out of the platform altogether and really base your audience on in-market, real intent, you know, real world visits, as opposed to just who you might think your target audience is based on, you know, different interests or, you know, man versus women or whatever kind of audience that you're coming up with.
Okay, so here's an interesting question from James Dix that there's a sort of twist on what we've been talking about here. Is the Facebook versus TikTok story similar in emerging markets, or does TikTok or Facebook have more of an advantage there, either with users or advertisers?
I think the short version of that answer is that Meta has properties that are more widely used in emerging markets than TikTok does. So TikTok is a one-trick pony, right? We know that it does one thing, and Meta does lots of things for lots of different geos. So in terms of diversification, you'd probably be best advised to think through Meta's options at the start if you're thinking of BRIC or other countries. TikTok, though, to Laura's point, you know, you can build a curated audience and target that audience in any number of ways, right? So from an emerging market standpoint, I think it's just going to depend on what your business goals are and thinking through which platform is going to best serve you. in terms of, is the battle true? Is the battle happening in geos outside of the US? There's no doubt, right? We're not the only country spending money on disposable, on goods and services. To what extent, I don't know. That is certainly outside the scope of this webinar. But this is not a quest for, American domination. This is a quest for, global user domination for sure.
Okay, we have a couple creative questions here. I mean, creative about creative as opposed to creative questions. Does TikTok creative need to be professional and polished? How are other brands doing it?
Laura, you might know this better than I do in terms of creative on TikTok.
So you can really go either way because there's plenty of user data out there too that brands really benefit from more stripped down kind of personal things. That's why influencers on social media are so they're paid so well because they're real people talking about the product, and most influencers will only promote things that they truly believe are worth buying or worth promoting to their network because their name is absolutely on stake there. And that's usually just a person in their room talking about the product. So, definitely not necessarily, a whole budgeted film. But then there's also the big brands that do, make whole productions, or even honestly, sometimes it's just an image, it's just a static image where, some things kind of move and there's some engaging music behind it. I know, Starbucks has some really simple ads like that where it's just kind of like a little cartoon and, in the brand, and it's just a quick little video. So it really has to do with what your brand is trying to get across and who you're selling to as well. So, people like to see themselves in whatever they're looking at. So, if you're trying to reach a certain demographic, make sure you're kind of representative in your creative, and think about who is your target audience with that. But I think you can kind of go either way.
Okay, so here's a related question going a little deeper, I suppose, from Sophie Tangel. How do you think agencies will be able to leverage TikTok ads, especially the creative process of TikTok ads? And it's talking about the uniqueness of the TikTok ad versus others.
Right. Boy, that is a super, the aperture on that question is super wide.
Yeah.
It's a good question. It's the right question to ask. I would start with who you are trying to attract, who you're trying to acquire, certainly, and think about what that audience expectations are. Short of that, which is the obvious part of answer one, figure out what trends are serving that audience. So TikTok gives you a great tool for capitalizing on existing trends. You guys know how this works. TikTok capitalizes on sounds or soundtracks or music. And all of those soundtracks / sound bites bleed into what's called a trend, which is essentially how things show up on your For You page, right? So if you're looking for a certain type of audience, that's your starting point. Figure out what they're consuming in terms of music, sound clips, themes, and then build your creative and make the sound the heart. If the verb is the heart of a sentence, the sound is the heart of your creative, right? So think about that in terms of building your creative around that central point, and then test and repeat, right? That's the secret, we all know, right? Keep experimenting with creative, keep trying, but forgive me for not having a more pointed answer, but if you want to ask a follow-up in terms of specific details around the audience or the geo or the market or the industry or the product, we could maybe give a more refined answer, but I think that's the place to start, is audience and trend.
So digging in a little into specific products, here's a question from Julie Schwend, who says TikTok will not allow wine retailers or wine brands to advertise. What's the workaround?
That's right. That's right. Laura, I bet you have some great ideas on this. Oh, Laura helps build audiences all the time for advertisers. Laura's got really creative solutions for this.
Yeah, so I can definitely, I'm one of them. So I'm not sure a workaround if TikTok has restrictions about the types of brands that are allowed to advertise. To be honest with you, you may need to I think your question said maybe you need to use an influencer or something, but you can definitely still use a custom audience. So that's really where I want to focus there, because it's what am I trying to say here? So wine drinkers is a pretty necessarily can be a niche kind of audience. So if you want to use location-based audiences, that's really a great way to do it. So if you geofence places like wine bars or wine stores, like a Total Wine would be perfect, and those have locations everywhere. There's plenty of restaurants and wineries that specialize in wine. Even Legal Seafood, which is a restaurant up in New England, even though it's a seafood restaurant, they also have a really extensive wine list, and they're known for that as well. So you can kind of think outside the box and find different locations that really specialize in wine, and you could really at least find your target audience there, and then you'd have to figure out, that's a little bit better than just everybody who's over the age of 21. So, you can at least start with your audience like that.
So here's a question that goes a little further in terms of audiences. Where do you get location-based audiences?
Yeah, so there's a couple different methods. There are different marketplaces where you can buy audiences like wine drinkers or young parents or something like that, and those are kind of curated and off the shelf. So that's definitely one option. There's another option where you can make your custom audiences. And in that case, you would need a geofencing marketing software. Like that's actually what we sell. So we sell audiences as well as the attribution aspect of it and the foot traffic analytics that we showed you in some of our slides. And if you have some more questions about how to utilize that or what it can do for you, definitely feel free to reach out afterwards. But I don't want to get too salesy on this since we're here to be educational.
Okay. So we talked a lot about TikTok ads. Here's a Facebook ad question. How do you keep Facebook ad costs down? They're still high.
Yeah, so go ahead, Dan.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Laura. I was going to offer one thought, and then please follow up if you'd like,
Sure.
by all means. Facebook, yes. CPMs are still high on Facebook. They were at an all-time high, I think, a year ago, when people wouldn't stop buying stuff for any good reason. The economy is cooling. We know that. We're reading the paper. We're reading the news. No one reads the paper. Except for Mike. Mike, we're still printing it for you for sure.
That's me, yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I'm kidding. The paper, the news, the media, call it what you want. We know the economy is cooling. We know we're not buying airplane tickets. We know we're not buying gas. We know we're not buying as many groceries as we used to. So as a result of demand dropping, guess what? Costs are also dropping. So Facebook costs are still high, but they're not as high as they used to be. The way to keep them down is to make sure your audience is as targeted as possible. So if you go fly into Facebook and you say, I want men over 25 who love sports, you're going to pay out the nose, right? Because it's a giant audience. You're not really refining, you're not really honing, and you're going to have a lot of wasted ad spend in that equation. And of course, I'm being glib. You're not going to do that. But the other end of that continuum is, to Laura's point earlier, be as super targeted as you can, super curated as you can, and target only those audiences who are in market. And our best recommendation for that, because we live and breathe this stuff all the time, is people who show real world intent by visiting physical locations that you care about, that you have an affinity for, or that your customers have an affinity for. So if you're selling yoga pants, target only those people who are going to yoga studios. Why not? It's possible. You can do it with location data. If you're targeting, wine drinkers, don't just target people who've liked a wine page on Facebook. Target everybody, to Laura's point, who've been to Total Wine in the last 30 days, right? You want that audience, you've got it, and there's no wasted ad spend in that equation. So people who show real world intent is my best recommendation for reducing wasted ad spend on Facebook.
Yeah, just the one additional thing to add to that, because it's exactly right. And the biggest thing that you kept saying that I really want to hone in on is reduce wasted ad spend. So even if you run these geo-targeted audiences and your CPM or whatever kind of marketing metrics that you think may still be high, these are the people that are most likely to convert. So it's worth spending a little bit more, especially when you can measure on the other end actual top line sales and actual foot traffic at foot traffic that your ads drove. So that way you're not, just throwing a whole bunch of money into the ocean and hoping somebody catches it. You can actually, you're just giving out to the right people.
Okay, so we're almost out of time. We have a bunch of additional questions, but rather than get deep into any of them, Dan and Laura, I'm wondering if you have any particular points that you've thought of during this whole discussion that you want to make sure you convey to the audience before we go.
The one thing that rises to the surface for me, based on the questions alone, because that's really the only data I have to go off of, is people are still trying to figure out how to make TikTok work. And it's obvious, right? It's still early days. Frankly, it's early days, for Facebook in the grand scheme of things. We're all trying to make social work better for us. But if you're still in that camp of trying to make TikTok work for you in terms of where do I start? How does this even, work? There's a lot of great resources out there. Actually, it's something we've been thinking about a lot at Reveal Mobile. TikTok is an emerging channel. It is going to be an 800-pound gorilla very soon. So we put together sort of a best practices for agencies and the best practices for brands on how to market on TikTok. You can go to revealmobile.com, hit our blog, and read that article. It's not gated. There's no email address required. Just hit it and read it. But I think it starts with the creator center for TikTok. If that's kind of your first stop on how to make TikTok work, absorb some of their content. TikTok is for you. They're really good at positioning themselves as being an ally to the advertiser, as opposed to yeah, come on in, we don't really care if you're here, how long you stay, make the best of it. They're really about, come on in, how we can help, how can we help you? Here's some tools. Oh, here's another tool in case that one didn't work. So they have this sort of helper mentality. Consume those resources, consume the resources we put together, blogs, infographics, all that. We did a white paper on it actually, so you can download that as well. But that's the one thing I would take away. Laura, any additional thoughts you want to offer?
No, I'm right in the same boat with you. I was just going to say that too. We have a lot of resources, and I think we've mentioned it. We've done a couple of webinars on TikTok, so definitely check out our website, or our emails are right there. We'd be happy to send you the direct link too if you reach out.
Okay. Well, then I think with that, we'll wrap it for today. I want to remind everyone that if you ask questions that did not get answered, and there were quite a number of them today, don't worry. The folks at Reveal Mobile will receive all your questions. They can respond to each of you directly after the webinar is over. Thanks again to Dan and Laura for a great presentation, and to the audience for a lot of really great questions. Thanks also to all of those behind the scenes at Reveal Mobile who helped to put all this together. We hope you found the information presented today helpful and informative. Stay tuned to MediaPost's website and digital publications in your inbox for more informative webinars to come from other valuable MediaPost partners in the weeks and months to come. Thanks so much to all of you for joining today. We'll see you next time, and stay safe out there. Take care. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.